Hey, you guys, I am so glad we're together. And one of the things that I was thinking about when we were thinking about this time together is what I wanted in junior high school. And you know what I wanted in junior high school more than anything? A date. I wanted Jesus, like he met this blind guy, and the guy is at the gate. He's like, I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind. And I love that he walked up and he said, what do you want? And I don't think Jesus was confused about that. I think he wanted to know, does this guy know what he wants? And so in junior high school, I was crystal clear. It never quite happened, but I was crystal clear what I wanted. And then I rolled into high school and I wanted the same thing. I just wanted a date. I just didn't seem to be that much to ask. I mean, with a face like this, it never happened, even in 4 years. And so I rolled into college and I squeezed 4 years of college into 5, and I wanted the same thing. It didn't happen. 5 years of college. Like, what? Do I have something pinned on my shirt that says, like, don't go out on a date with this guy? I'm in my second year of law school, and Maria walked in the room. And I was like, yes, you will be mine. And I asked her on a date. You know what she said? No. I'm like, darn it. You ever have that happen, like where you have something that you want really bad and then it just doesn't happen? There's sometimes this will happen in your faith. You'll just say you want something really bad and it just escapes. And I don't think it's that God is ignoring us. I think he wants us first to have a lot of clarity about what you want. And then he wants to know, why do you want it? Like, think about that. What do you want? Why do you want it? And then what are you going to do about it? So for me, I'm just constantly vetting things. Like, what is it that I wanted the worst way? And even if it didn't happen, I say, am I willing to keep trying? Am I willing to stay after it? Well, I heard Maria was going to be at this Young Life camp. She was going to be the work crew. She got 12 women from high school, and they were going to be the work crew. So I got 12 guys. I'm no dummy. I got 12 high school guys, and we were the guys' work crew. And the first night of this camp, this elderly woman, her pacemaker stops. She face plants in the spaghetti. She's out of here. Like, go to Jesus, gone. But I knew how to do CPR. I got her on the floor and I am pushing on her chest. I'm blowing into her wrinkled lips. It was not the first kiss I was hoping for. And she woke up. She lived like full Lazarus. And I think Maria thought, this guy's not much to look at, but he could be useful in a pinch. What is it that you guys want? Like, think about that for a second. You want to have love, purpose, connection, and a couple authentic relationships. Your list might be longer than that, but it ain't going to be any shorter than that. So think about that, the things that we want, and then what is it that distracts us from what we want, right? And so sometimes it's getting approval from your friends. You just have this thing you want to do that, but you're not sure if your friends are going to think that's cool. And so you're kind of taking the straw vote. What I want to do is get right back to Jesus and the blind guy saying, what do you want? It isn't what do your 3 most insecure friends want? I'm going to average that out. But what do you want? And maybe start making a list. I only had one thing, a date. Well, it was 35 years and 3 kids later, this camp that we met at came up for sale. Isn't that crazy? They put it up for sale at 1. I bought it at 2. This was ground zero of this place. Well, I was so excited about having a camp and then having people come and their lives would be changed and all that. Well, then COVID happened right when we were supposed to open it up. And in California, you couldn't even have tumbleweeds go through without face masks on it. And so I was like, darn it. So we were just losing so much money having this camp. And I looked across this valley and there's a broken down barn, a big field, and a horse racing track that had weeds 5 feet tall. And so I thought, what if I get the barn, the field, and the track? Now, you guys, I don't know anything about horses, but we got it. We fixed up the barn. We started watering the field. We cut the weeds down in the track. And this woman came. She called me up. She said, do you want my horse? I'm like, of course, because it rhymes. And so we got this horse, and it turns out that if you want to have baby horses, then you have one horse get together with another horse. And well, it's a longer explanation, but there was this thing about this horse. You need to figure out, where did the horse come, like who is like on the family tree. Get this horse is the great-great-granddaughter of Secretariat, the most famous horse in all of horsedom. And so I called up the lady. I'm like, lady, you gave me royalty. Let me give you your horse back. You know what she said? She said, Bob, I knew. I just wanted to surprise you. I'm like, well, check that box. Here's the deal. Yeah, I have a really orthodox view of faith and scripture. I think God knows everything that has happened, everything that is happening, and everything that's going to happen. But here's the crazy part. The angels don't. The angels only know whatever God's told them. Is that crazy? Like, so he said, like, to one angel, tell Joseph he's going to be a father. Can you imagine Joseph? He's like, no way. And then like, no way. So what if you have the angels are leaning over the rails, just waiting to see if you guys will want the kind of things that Jesus said he wanted you to want. Matthew 25, it said, like, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger. I was kind of creepy and you invited me in. I was sick and you comforted me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in jail and you came. Is that crazy? Think about this. People that want to, like, I've heard them say, I want God's plan for my life. Like, people, that's God's plan for your life. Hungry people, thirsty people, sick people, strange people, naked people, and people in jail. James talks about widows and orphans. And so when I vet like my list, like what do I want? I want to find people that are actually hungry. You just literally just get somebody a burger. Thirsty people, find somebody who's thirsty. I carry around in my car like little bottles of water, and I'll ask people like, are you thirsty? And they're like, I am. I'm like, yes, right? So just find things to engage the people around you. And the crazy part about this is that Jesus said, when you find them, you'll find me. So we just have people that are just like trying to find Jesus. And I'm like, the promise is if you find hungry people, thirsty people, sick people, strange people, naked people, people in jail, you'll actually find him. I've got a friend who lives here in town, and he plays a whole bunch of music. And he'll fill up these big arenas. And so I got together with him before they went out on the stage, and we were talking about just old times. And there was a guy sitting at the end of the table, and I didn't know who he was. I guess he knew somebody in the band. And so, but he sat there, he was just staring at me. Have you ever had somebody just like stare at you and it starts feeling kind of creepy? I'm like, dude. So I was just kind of trying to ignore that and keep my head in the game. Well, these guys had to go out on the stage and play their music. So me and the guy at the end of the table walked out the side, and we were going to kind of slip in through one of the side doors. And I walked through the door and sat down. Nobody said anything. He walks through the door. People lose their mind. Evidently, he's this actor. His name is Jim Caviezel. And in The Passion of Christ, he's the Messiah. You guys, I was in the room with Jesus for an hour, and I didn't even know it. And I want you to do this, to say, if you want to find God, get your head on a swivel. To say, what are the things that he's got going on around you? Acts 1:1, Theophilus, lover of God. Look for many convincing proofs that Jesus is still alive. So it's whether you were at camp this summer, whether you're on the campus of your school, to just say, I'm going to look for evidence that he's alive. And the crazy thing is, find hungry people, thirsty people, sick people, strange people, naked people, people in jail. You'll find widows and orphans, and you'll see that he's alive. That's why Jesus is in the room. When they're there, he's there. Sometimes what will happen is that you feel this pull to be at the kind of cool kids table. Do they have that like in school? Is there like the place for the kind of the cool cats are? Yes, at my school too. And I never had a chair at that table. And you know what? Jesus loves everybody equal. They're all tied for first, but he goes for the people that are on the outside, the people that feel isolated and lonely. And there's a great verse. It's Paul talking about his buddy Timothy behind his back. He said, I don't have anybody like Timothy. He's a guy who takes a genuine interest in the people around him. I really kind of like that. Whatever the setting, campus, camp, whatever, to take a genuine interest in somebody around you. To just say, I actually want to ask some questions, figure out, hey, what's your favorite thing? Hey, if I was going to give you a new name, what would it be? Think about that. Just say, what has been the best thing that's happened or the worst thing that's happened to you? And then just be aware, because from that, you get the question to this answer that Jesus asked the blind guy. What do you want? I didn't get that date, but I got Sweet Maria. I ended up getting the camp. I got a horse. My horse had a horse. I don't know. It's crazy. But what I want you to do is, in the most unlikely way, what it started is me saying, I'm not giving up. I knew what I wanted, and I'm going to make moves. Just trusting that God is going to fit all the rest together.
So God's done a lot with your life. How have you grown to understand God's love the way you do, or how has it got you to where you are?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. For me, it's having my head on a swivel, like seeing what God's up to. And sometimes in the most unlikely ways, that I'll notice something and I'll wonder if this is the beginning of God starting to do something that might be incredible. And maybe like you, it starts with an opportunity, that there's this thing you get invited and you think like, gosh, should I do this or not? And then I just make a move. And then you say, like, should I make another move? So we've got like a bunch of different things. I've got a school in Afghanistan for girls. Is that crazy? And it all came from meeting a guy who said he was from Afghanistan, and he invited me there. So I said yes. I flew to Kabul alone. So just like make one move and then make the next move and the next move. And what I do, I can't always see it in real time, but in retrospect, I can see the hand of God, how he's made these things available. Great question.
In your first question, you talked about making moves. How do you deal with not knowing what your next move is? Do you just
Yeah, the people that concern me more are the people that act like they're positive about everything. They say, well, I just did this, obviously. And then I did this, obviously. And nothing is that obvious to me. I don't know how it works out for you, but there's a verse at Zechariah 4:10, and it says that we don't despise these small beginnings, that the Lord delights in watching the work begin, right? I don't know if you've ever seen a kid taking their first step, but I saw my grandson and he took his first step, and I didn't say I've seen better. No, that was awesome. And I feel like every time we just shuffle our feet forward a little bit, it's like God delights in seeing us make a move, even if it's a small one, but he never compares what he creates. He he isn't comparing your move against my move against your move. I think he just likes us to see us do things that are courageous. That idea, 2 Timothy 1:7, that he didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control. I just saying I'm being held back because I'm just scared or I'm afraid of what somebody will think. So I like that idea, just shuffling your feet forward.
So I always feel like I have a blind eye towards God's love in my life, and I wondered how I could maybe see it better.
Yeah, tell me about that, the blind eye when you say it. What do you mean?
I feel like she was saying earlier, how when you pray and then you feel like he doesn't hear, or when I'm lost and I just can't seem to find any hope or any faith, and I just don't know what to do.
Yeah, the first step is realizing what's going on. When you said a blind eye, I actually lost my sight in my eye. It just I woke up one day and it was gone. Is that crazy? Yeah. They did a series of, it was 8 operations over the longest period of time to see if they could make it come back. But the thing that was kind of cool is I knew what was going on. I'd pull up to intersections and it'd be there was nothing over here. I ended up looking around. So the first thing is realizing that I have a blind eye to these things. It's limiting me in this way and that way. And to figure out, how do I compensate? What do? Look a little harder. And what I found for me is when I feel far away from God, I usually try to say, what's that connected to? Because usually something's connected to something else. You know what I mean? If I'm feeling anxious, or distracted. What's that connected to? Oh, it's connected to me not feeling accepted, or it's me feeling I'm like carrying too much of my friends' burdens, and I've somehow confused what their stuff is and what my stuff is. It would be this idea of codependency. Like I'm actually kind of confused about it. So the blind eye question is to say, like, okay, first, no, I feel like I'm operating at a disadvantage, and to say, okay, so what I'm going to do is heighten my awareness, and I'm going to start by seeing what's that connected to.
So God only knows what like we've personally been through, but like, and we talk about these relationships with other people, but how do we have that relationship with God when sometimes like you try to talk to him, but you feel like he's not listening?
Yeah, have you guys all experienced that where you say a prayer and it feels like it just ricocheted off the ceiling? You're like, yeah, to just say, I feel like that idea of first making it known to yourself, like to just know, like this is really I've got a finger on what it is. And even if I pray the prayer and it feels like it didn't go anywhere, but to just say, I'm just going to trust, I'm just going to keep praying that prayer. And it's not like I'm daring you, God, because he will turn you into a pillar of salt. Like I'm not daring you to show up, but I'm anticipating that if I just keep making that request known to you, that'll happen. What if you asked me for something? I'm not God, but if you said, I could really use a soda pop right now. And I'd be like, yeah, whatever. And then you said, like, I could really use a soda pop right now. After a little while, I'd go like, the girl could really use a soda pop right now. To just like, I wouldn't feel like you were pestering me. I'd feel like you really knew what you wanted. And what if you have a dad, if you just anticipate like God's resting position is towards you? Like he isn't just like, yeah, whatever, make your request known. It's like, you can tell when somebody's engaged, they're kind of leaning forward. And so my picture is of a God that is leaning towards me. I picture Jesus leaning in towards me saying, make your request known. It's almost like he's got his elbows on his knees. Say, look, let's talk. And that's a different feeling than that helps me break through that like ricocheting off the ceiling feeling with my prayers.
I want to learn how to like love God in the right way so I can like further my relationship with him and kind of learn a little bit more like about his nature. How would you start in doing that?
Yeah, it really just begs the question, like, what's your definition of love? You want to love God the right way. Like, what would it be? I remember my daughter, she was younger than you, but I told her when you get to like high school, somebody's going to want to invite you to the prom. And I want you to do this. Ask them what's your definition of love. And if it's a guy, he won't know. So send him home and say, figure out what love is. And when you got to figure it out, tell me what you think it is. And if he comes back and says it's like, butterflies, like you can get that from bad pizza. But love is sacrifice and commitment. Like here, let me hear you say that once. Love is sacrifice and commitment. And so if you figure out the definition of love, so God's love for us, it was sacrifice. It was Jesus on a cross, like, fully God, but saying fully human commitment to just say, I am in. And so when I think about a definition of love, like this kind of love that God would have for us, I think of sacrifice and commitment. And so for me too, in the way that I love other people, I don't want to just go maybe you guys have some convenient friends, like people that are just around when it's super easy, but then when things get hard, you're like, where'd everybody go? Like I would say I want to exchange that for the version sacrifice and commitment. Great question.
I've seen a lot of fake and broken love in the world. How can I tell the difference between that love and God's love?
Yeah, what a great question. I'm thinking about shelf life. Like, some people will say, I love you, I love you. Have you ever had somebody that just says like, we're BFFs forever. And then like next Saturday is like, where'd everybody go? So part of that, it isn't insincere, but maybe they haven't had a strong example of what we were talking about, love being sacrifice and commitment, that they haven't understood long-term friendships, that you're just there through thick and thin. And so when you mentioned like kind of fake friendships, tell me what you're thinking about. Like when you said a fake or like not an authentic friendship, what does that felt like for you?
It's like friends I've had, and then when somebody else comes along that maybe they like more, that they'll just like leave me behind, or like just like won't talk to me or like bring me down in front of them to make themselves feel better, something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of a crummy feeling. And I think everybody can relate to that. It's happened. I remember getting up the guts to ask this girl named Paula. I won't say her last name. She might be listening. I asked her to the prom. And you know what happened the day before the prom? She got a better offer, which would have actually been anybody other than me. And she told me, like, she's not going to the prom with me. She's going with this guy over there. And I'm like, little Bobby Goff. Like, oh my gosh, it just felt like so much rejection. Because you know what? It was. Like, she was just saying, I'd prefer. Has that ever happened to you with a friend group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friend groups have just like left me behind.
Be like, what happened? Yeah. And so sometimes it's just to get real with it. That's really painful. And I think those are the times when God wants us to bring those things that we're confused about to Him. I don't think we need to come with all the answers. And I think that was a pressure I felt like when I came to faith, that I needed to have an answer for everything. There's a guy who was Mark 9, who was a dad like me, and he asked Jesus for something. And Jesus said, you need to believe. And he said, I believe, help my unbelief. And so it's at one point, it feels like this struggle, like, how can you both believe and not believe at the same time? I'm like, well, have a group of friends bail out on you. And to say, like, I believe in this friendship, at the same time, like, help me with the parts I don't get. And I think that idea, bringing that to God to say, I got some real questions about that. I'm not bitter, I just don't get it. And I think God delights when we do that. We just bring those kind of like hurts. Instead of somebody say, well, you just, and they give some answer that's lame. Because if it was that easy, you would have figured it out. But that idea to bring it to God, make these requests known to Him. Here's the crazy part. He said, like, He knows what we want before we even ask for it. So I think this idea of making your requests known to God means first making it known to yourself. To say, I'm feeling a little bit lonely, a little bit hurt by what this friend group did. And once you understand it yourself, then bring it to Him. What's your question? Come on.
So earlier you had talked about, like, if they're thirsty, you give them water and, like, you give them what you have. But, like, how are you able to take care of all these people if I don't even have the resources myself?
Yeah, and by resources, you're not thinking like, I don't have the money to do it. It's just like sometimes it's the ability, like the energy to do it. Or when you say resources, do you mean like, do I have the money?
Both.
Yeah. Sometimes finding the resources in terms of like, food and funds and all that, that seems like that is not as hard as sometimes having the emotional energy to do something. So for me, I just try to say, if I have this, it's called a limiting belief. If I have a limiting belief that I don't have what it takes to address that, I want to say again, what is that connected to? I'm going to tell you something I bet you don't know. An anaconda is 25 feet long, 3 feet around. That's a big snake. Are any of you guys afraid of snakes? Like, you should be afraid of anacondas. And if it wraps around you, if it starts like putting the squeeze on you, you'll only have about a minute. Do you know what anacondas are uniquely susceptible to? One drop of like alcohol, like just from a little swab, if it was on its nose, it would completely let you go. Is that crazy? So now you know if you're going through the Amazon what to do. One drop right on its nose. Here's the thing that some of my fears are uniquely susceptible to: truth and obedience. So if I feel like the things have me in a squeeze because I want to like reach out to people, but I don't know how, or I don't feel like I have the resources or the emotional resources, what I want to do is to say, if that's putting the squeeze on me, what I want to do is put some truth over it. I want to say, what's actually available to me? And like, you've got you available to you. You guys are available. Like, I feel like if I was in need and I could let you know what that need, would you just blow it off? Or would you say like, no, I'm in?
Certainly.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah.
I think I'd feel the same way. If you guys had a need, let me know. And I think there's something about that. If we say that the truth of the matter is that I'm surrounded by people who want to meet the needs. So what I'm thinking about for people that are hurting, if I don't feel like I have the financial or emotional resources, to just know, look around the room and see there's a bunch of people. I want to put a drop of that truth on it. And then obedience. I want to actually do it. I don't want to like leave it up here in my mind. I want to actually do something. Are you pretty good at moving it from like your head to your heart to actually like do things? Or do you tend to get stuck up in your head?
I think I get stuck in my head.
Yeah, yeah. And is it fear that like maybe it won't work, so I'm not going to do it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, for me, that happens a lot of times. I decided in advance, I'm going to fail trying. I'm not going to fail watching. And that was a really small shift, but it was an important one. Here, put your fingers like this in front of you, like you're going to weave them together, and go from this to give it a little shift. Line it up. Yeah. So when I feel like I can't see the people there, it's usually just a small little shift that'll make all the difference. And so for me, just think about that. What shift do I need to make? Put a little truth, put a little obedience on it. And it's not a big shift. It's a small shift in perspective that'll make all the difference. Well, what a treat to be with you guys. Thank you so much for letting me hear about your lives and your stories. And I'm telling you, from a guy who's 60, and on behalf of like all these old people that are my vintage, we're putting all of our chips on you. We really believe in you. You are the hope of this world. Just keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. It's Hebrews 12:1. It says, since we're surrounded by this tremendous cloud of witnesses, let's like run undistracted with endurance this race before us. Keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. You guys, this has been really great. Thanks for making time.
Here.
Thank you.